Plateau State. So Plateau State is literally named by the geography of the state, right? It's the most level land of the country, Plateau State, with fantastic weather. One of the things I loved, and there are many things I loved about growing up there, was the weather. I used to think that if I ever moved from Plateau State, I would move out of Nigeria because
I think there is a problem there. That is why they need you. Because if, like you explained it, it's always working fine, nobody will need you to be counseling them to be happy then in marriage. So what do you really do for people within your marriage counseling?
marriage is like stopping a taxi. Okay, now people in the international community may not really understand what I'm saying. Here in Nigeria, sometimes you could just stand on the roadside and flag down a taxi. I know in many places you can do that. Apart from Uber and all that, you can flag down a cab, right? So marriage is like a woman flagging down a cab or standing by the roadside and a cab stops. Now imagine with me that this woman has a phone in her hand and she's holding it to her ear and she's chatting with her friend. Yeah, how are you doing? And all this and all that. And she flags down the car. She gets into the car. Yes, are you serious? Oh my gosh, she's still gisting. And then the car starts to move. Somewhere along the line, she starts to look around. It's like, where am I?
Of storytelling here. Could you tell me anything about yourself? Then I will pick it up from there.
There's a lot I can say about me, but I'm Tolu Ekwe. That's my name. I'm a Christian. I believe in God very seriously. My story cannot be told without him. I am a pharmacist by training. So I went to the university and studied pharmacy first. But I've always been one to ask questions, to seek purpose, to want to be doing what I believe to be right and to be true to myself and to God. And so over the years, different things have come up. I'm married to my best friend. And
that is very lovely.
Yeah, we have 3 amazing children. And I think growing up, one of the things that really bothered me was I used to look out for models of happy homes, happy marriage. There was a picture in my head. I think that picture came maybe from movies, maybe from different things, ideals. I wanted something. And I was finding it very difficult to find the models of what I wanted. So I remember by the time I got to my early 20s, I used to think about how I didn't want to marry if it wasn't going to be a happy marriage. Like, it was very important to me that I had a happy home. Otherwise, it was all or nothing for me. I didn't have to marry. So if I was going to marry, it had to be a happy marriage. And that's how I used to pray about it. I'm glad that God answered that prayer. And I think maybe that mindset is what has led the line to us being counselors first in church. And then now I also got certified as a marriage coach. So marriage is one of the things I do. And that is especially helping people who are contemplating marriage to understand it and to make right choices. Then, yeah, there are other things I do, but I'm really about people development and helping people to become better.
That is very interesting, Tolu. That is really very interesting. The question of marriage. So yeah, that is an important conversation today. Are you in Lagos or in Akure? Okay, you are in Abuja. Could you tell me how you got there? Like, okay, I don't know. We are trying to understand. We are trying to trace your journey.
That's where I'm from. From my roots. Okay. So I grew up in Plateau State. So Plateau State is literally named by the geography of the state, right? It's the most level land of the country, Plateau State, with fantastic weather. One of the things I loved, and there are many things I loved about growing up there, was the weather. I used to think that if I ever moved from Plateau State, I would move out of Nigeria because everywhere else was too hot. So that was what I thought, you know. It was really cool weather, really sweet weather. Then the people also were so peaceful and loving. And it never occurred to me that I would ever live outside of Jos, Plateau State, and in another country, another part of Nigeria. So when eventually things started turning rough, one major thing that if you know about Jos, you know that it used to be very peaceful. Then we had that stretch of crises, you know, religious crises and ethnic crises and all that. And it now became unsafe. Around that time, my husband had also moved because his career was taking him to different places, and I was based there in Jos. But one of the things that I had developed as a personal ideal was that I always believed that if it ever came to a choice between my family and my career, I would choose family over career. And not as a general principle for all of humanity, but it was my personal choice and decision. It was something that I felt was important for me, being the wife in the marriage and being also someone who's very passionate about family. If I lost my job, I would survive better than I would if I lost my family, if that makes sense. So, yeah, so that was the way I saw it. So, when the time came to make that choice, I chose to join him in Abuja. So, that's how I landed in Abuja. Yeah, not knowing what I was going to do in Abuja at the time, but just jumping by faith. And I believe God caught me because when they say, when a father says, baby jump, daddy catches
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And
Yeah, but that is interesting. If you have a husband that is already there now, it becomes much easier. Of course, either traditional marriage. I think we are going to touch on it just now because we're talking about marriage. We are going to be looking at it from different dimensions. When a
okay.
man and a woman get married, the woman usually go to join the husband, whatever she stays. So that is interesting. It's understandable, no? And of course, there is love in the middle. So yeah, you can jump really.
I see how you would think that, right? But that's not quite how it was because we were much more stable in Jos. We had been in Jos together, and that's where our stability was. And then he moved, and he was quite unstable, moved from Lagos to Kano to, you know, and then now he was just arriving in Abuja and was not quite stable at all. At the time I joined him, it wasn't a stable choice, but it was the best choice in hindsight. Yeah.
Happy about that. Happy about that.
Yeah.
All right, Tolu, tell me. So you grew up in Jos and you described this beautiful Jos. There is a lot of things about Jos that I'm curious about. I remember a couple of years
Mhm.
ago, I interviewed a senior lecturer at the University of Jos, and I was asking some peculiar question. I'm going to ask you some of the question later on because there is something very
Okay.
important about that Jos, that part of Nigeria. All right,
Okay.
first, tell me, you were growing up as a young girl. What do you see around you?
Okay. So first of all, when we say Jos, right, you're thinking of the capital of Plateau State. My childhood was more in Vom, which is like a village in a sense. Okay, it was the more serene, more homely, more like the countryside part of Plateau State. And that's where I grew up. And I think one of the things about that was, you know, this whole lifestyle where city life, you have people living behind fences and all this sense of security and guards and walls. It was very foreign to me because we grew up free to just run in the streets and, you know, climb trees and pluck mangoes. We had this big orchard at the back of our house, you know, mangoes just falling all over the place in the rainy season. Um, it was just fun, right? There was a time when they used to bring delivery, they used to bring milk and meat and all kinds of things to the house because it was like this institute where there was all this production of farm produce. So it was a very sweet time. So my memories of childhood are very, very different from the way things are now. Yogurt, I remember yogurt. I remember all these things were just free and, you know, fresh milk, eggs. in terms of food. Why am I talking about food? Memories, and I'm talking about food. Okay, there are other things. So there
They're
was
part of it.
right. There was riding bicycles and playing tennis, and yeah, just a lot of fun and sweet memories, really. So that was Vom. That was where I grew up. But we used to go to church in town. So Jos was where I had a good number of my friends. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. It was very chilled out, not chilled out in a bad way, not like terribly laid back. There was this massive market called Terminus Market at the time. It was like the center of town, and it was where everything was. You could find everything, And so I feel like my memories of childhood were so beautiful. And then came the ugly years, because Terminus got burnt down, fear came in, running for your life, all of that came in much later. But the early years, beautiful. Everybody, we didn't really know who was from what tribe or all of those things. All that came later. It was just sweet and comfortable and loving. Yeah, that was childhood.
That's a very jealous picture now. That's a very jealous picture. I tell people sometimes, I think I still believe that Africa was the paradise. And I think it still is, only that we are destroying it, but that is a paradise.
It was.
Everything is there. I think Africa is really the only continent that can survive without any other person. I live in Europe. Africa can survive independently. Of course, this is outside the misconception that we have been given in school that we are incapable of anything. But we are so blessed. We are full. We are a full package. Anyway, that is a different argument now. We're not going there. But I really love the picture they are painting for me about Jos. And I can attest to that because I grew up in the village too.
Right.
In Nigeria, if you look at Uromi, which is where I grew up, that is my town, there is a bit of similarity to Jos. In that Jos is an upland, which is a kind of a plateau. It's called Jos Plateau. So Uromi also is a plateau, but not a very high like Jos. So the temperature in Uromi is a little bit different compared to other part of Esan.
Okay.
So because it's a sort of almost level land, we don't have water. Okay, that is fine. But it's kind of very contained temperature and it's very attractive. One of the most, actually, is the most populated part of the whole of Esan land, if you know the history of Edo State. So I happen to have grew up in the village, and I tell people that one of the best things that have happened to me in life is that I grew up in the village. What I imply is that I know my culture. I know the raw value of what it means. I can explain it because I participated in it. I didn't read it in the book, which is different from somebody who would have grown up in Lagos now, who maybe try to understand the culture of his father or his mother. I was there until 24 years before I left Nigeria. That is a couple of years ago now, 2004. So I remember that was a book I wrote. The book is titled Ahmed the Stream Water. So I was presenting the book here, then I gave it to one anthropology here in the city that I'm living in. She reviewed the book and she really fell in love with the book. Okay, it's a very small book, but it's very interesting too. In fact, when I was writing it, I didn't know that it was that interesting. It was later people were pointing it out for me. And I went to read it. I said, really? Yes, this is interesting. So she was telling me that the book, as I was describing how I was growing up in the village, the kind of thing that we used to do, like you were saying, how we used to play in the mud, because the land of Esan is red. So when it rains now, the flood become red like blood. And as for us as little children, it's fun time. We just jump into it now. We are having fun, like this is the end of the world.
Oh my goodness.
And the way I describe it, she could sense the perfume of the rain because there was a lot of rain as symbol in the book. because the title is Amen there. Amen in my places mean water.
So I understand. You smell rain, right? By the way, I don't know what it is. My husband keeps harassing me about how it doesn't make sense. Nobody smells rain. What are you talking about? I'm like, I smell rain. My kids smell rain. You're the only person in this house who doesn't smell rain. And I love the smell of rain. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Absolutely. No, perfectly fine. No, of course, that is the smell of rain. We know, no? So this woman, this anthropology was telling me that she could smell the rain in the description of the book. It reminded her how they used to live here too in Italy in the time, how they used to jump into the rain to play. These are value that you cannot buy in the market. Now, my son, who is 7 years, okay, anyway, sometimes when we go out, when it's raining, he want to jump and start playing in the rain. That will usually be, hey, but you don't want to dirty yourself and all of that. But how things have changed. All right. Now, tell me, Tolu, so all this time, what were the things that was actually occupying your mind most as you were growing up there in Jos, as you were growing up a little bit bigger now? I mean, I'm trying to understand what you were looking up to as an adult.
Who I was looking up to? At different points, I think. Okay, so you're not going to make me cry, right? But I think one person that was a very prominent model for my life, and I think it was because I watched the different phases of her life. I watched when I was really young. She was working a job. To be honest, I don't think I remember this part, but I remember the stories around it. She was working a job in a hospital, home Christian hospital at the time. But as she started having babies, she realized that, look, I need to commit time to my family. And maybe that's part of where my values come from. It's the fact that this was somebody who was focused on her family and making sure her family was okay above her career. And so she left that job and started doing a poultry farm. She had a poultry at the back of the house and was raising chickens. This was supposed to be just, some little subsistence farming, nothing special. But she was a very resourceful person. She did really well. And before you knew what was happening, she was selling lots of eggs and lots of chickens. And I don't know why, but there's this memory that comes to mind. There was a day my siblings and I were back from school. We usually walked from our school. Our primary school was it was like an estate, right? In the institute. So maybe a 20, 30 minutes walk, I don't know, from school. And at that time, school used to close early. Like primary schools now stay on till sometimes 3, 4, 5 p.m. That's completely different from what we had. We closed at 2:30, 12:30, I think, even. 12:30, walk home. By 1:30, you had lunch, you had slept. So you'd sleep till about 4 p.m. Anyway, so just things that have changed. But back to my story. I remember this day that she was in the poultry house and we were all in the house. And I think one of us must have we had this little stuffed animal. It was a rat. I don't know why we would have a toy rat, but we did. and somebody must have thrown it. But the imagery in my head, it was like a live rat. Like that bit of time that it rolled before it stopped. Oh my God, it was live and we were all screaming, we were all terrified. And this rat would not move because it wasn't real, right? So it was stuck there in the middle of the parlor and we were hiding behind the chairs, screaming, shouting, "Mommy, help, help." And the rat would not move. If it would move, we could move until she heard us and she came in. I just remember that. And, of course, us because there was nothing to be afraid of. But I remember silly things like that about my mom. My mom was always there. She would whip up a meal. There were things that she cooked. Sometimes I've never seen some of the things she made or the way she made them replicated elsewhere. So they're just in my head. They're not on Google because she passed on before Google came on. But they're there, and I keep thinking, man, this woman was phenomenal. And very few people know, so yeah, my mom was definitely my mentor and my best friend for the longest time. So yeah, my mom would be number one of the people that I looked up to. Another person I looked up to, so I had this Ghanaian teacher in primary school, Mr. Enning. Mr. Enning had a Ghanaian accent. But he was fond of me in a funny way. He was very strict and very stern. So it wasn't obvious that he was fond of me, but he would say, "Hey, come here. Tolu, you did not do this. Go and do it, And it just always seemed like he was always on my case. But I remember when I finished, I think it was primary 2. I finished primary 2, and I remember this particular, in fact, I've given a speech about it before. He reported in my report card that I was an outstanding student. And this was my first encounter with that word, outstanding. And my parents were reading it from my report card when they came to the class. And I freaked out because I knew for a fact that I was not standing outside. I was always sitting in class. Why would you say I was outstanding? I was not. I was always in sitting.
So you were in standing.
Yes, that was. But I really liked him because he always pushed me. He felt you could do better. You could do better, and he wouldn't settle for less than an A in my math. He taught me math, so yeah, I remember that.
That was a good mentor. That was a good person.
Later on, other mentors came up in secondary school. Mr. Diaga. In fact, I'm still in touch with him. He was, funny enough, math teacher. I'm actually wondering, I don't think Mr. Enning taught me math, but I think he was my class teacher. But he was on my case about my math. I don't remember, to be honest, and unfortunately he has passed on. I guess I can ask my classmates. I'm not sure. But Mr. Adeaga taught me math. And he was also in the faith. He was about, look, you need to know the Lord for yourself. He was more like a big brother, really. Yeah. In some ways, he still is. So that's someone else I looked up to.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you talked about your mom. I could feel that. So how old were you when she passed away?
I had my second baby when she passed away, but she had been sick for about 5 years before that. So, yeah.
Sorry about that. So you need to be strong.
Thank you.
So you are in Jos. I would say Jos is a particular case. In that we have an outstanding history there, talking of the Nok culture. And because I'm not from Jos, you are from Jos, what can you tell us about that? Of course, we're not talking, that is not the topic of today's conversation. Just because you are there, is there anything that you could say about that?
So my perception of Jos is very different from yours. It's easy for you to isolate one culture and want to talk about it. Jos was full of different cultures. There's several minorities in Plateau State. Several. In Vom, where I grew up, the main tribe was Birom. And these people were, when we were growing up, when we were little, these people were very warm, very open, very maybe laid back, but also very welcoming. So I remember that they would have farm produce. So there's something called acha. I don't know if you know acha. And I'm not sure I know what the English name is, but it's like grits. It's like tiny little. It appears a bit like couscous.
Okay,
Like
I don't think I don't think maybe we might know it by another name. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else. I know the closest thing I've seen is maybe quinoa, but quinoa is a bigger grit. This is tiny little, yeah, and it's a very rich plant source for protein, for carbohydrates. These people farm it massively, expansively, and they would just come and they would give it to us freely and all of that. Potatoes, those kinds of things. So that was, in terms of food, they always had food. But in terms of the culture, you found that there was a lot of oppression of women. Women were kind of subjugated to the background. And a lot of these women were the ones who were fending for their families. They were going to the farm, they were carrying their babies on their backs and working, carrying hoes and producing, making sure something was happening for their families. And a lot of times they were married to men who were more into alcohol and more into, just philandering and things like that. So you found that there was a lot of that going on. And you find that over the years, I would now go to serve in in Bielsa and all of that. And you see a lot of that happening as well in different cultures across. So you see a lot of strong women. Okay. Now back to the cultures in Plateau State, you see a number of different tribes. So there's Tarok, there's Angas, there's so many different tribes. And you'll be amazed at how much diversity there is across those different tribes. But to be honest, I don't know that much about Nok culture specifically. Maybe if you ask me a specific question, then I would. Yeah, but I know that there's a lot of artwork when it comes to Nok culture. That's the one thing that I know about. You'll find that in the museums and all that. So,
yeah, okay. That's fine. Of course, we were never really there for that topic. That is a topic for the historian. I just wanted to learn more about it. Maybe there was something you could share on that, but that is fair enough. Because, of course, it's something that is dating more than 2,000 years old, so we might not have...
right. I should know, really, but I don't know. Sorry.
It's okay. No problem. Now, let's come back to where you are, which is in marriage. Now you have told us why you should be interested in marriage, because you thought of what have happened. Of course, you have prayed for a particular type of marriage, and that is what you have. That is what you are enjoying today. And you are also helping people to get into marriage, and that is really very interesting. And you are counseling people on how to have a good marriage, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, I want you to help us understand, what is marriage? Of course, we are going to be asking a series of questions here to help us clarify some of this part.
Marriage, that's a good question. Now, before I answer the question, right, I want you to understand that the reason why marriage is important is, if you let's look at it from the perspective of science. When you're talking of biology, you're talking of an organism. Usually you want to go to the smallest unit. You want to start talking about the cell. And the reason is, if we can understand the small bit, then we can extrapolate and understand the bigger picture. Okay, marriage is kind of like that. When you look at the society, if you want to start identifying societal problems and dealing with them from the big organizations of communities and towns and states and countries, you may not really get it. But when you come down to the smaller unit of the individual, and then the marriage, okay, the union of two that now produce the children, that family unit, you start to understand the bigger ills in society. Because if we can fix them at that level, at the smaller unit, then we're better able to sort out the bigger problems. So what is marriage? Marriage is the union of a man and a woman. Okay. Usually I add under God, because if you leave him out of it, it becomes a whole different matter, which is what you see in society today. Okay. A union of a man and a woman under God to build a life together and to build a family together. Now, already together as a man and a woman, that's already a family. Like, I say that so that you understand that whether children are involved or not, you already have a family if you have a man and a woman. But the two of them becoming one in unity of purpose, in unity of vision, and in unity of execution of that vision. For me, that's what marriage is.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I think this is really very important to understand this concept, this rudimentary concept of marriage. And I think there is a problem there. That is why they need you. Because if, like you explained it, it's always working fine, nobody will need you to be counseling them to be happy then in marriage. So that lead me to my first question. Actually, I want to call it my first question in the series. What do you really do for people within your marriage counseling?
Thank you. Okay, so here's the thing, right? A lot of people think that they know what they need to know about marriage. It's actually baffling to me when you find, take for example, I don't know how, and it'd be lovely to hear your story, how you decided to relocate from Uromi to where it is that you stay now.
Italy.
Was it something like, yesterday I was in Uromi, today I find myself in Italy, right? You're in Italy?
Yeah, correct.
Where
In Italy, correct. I'm in Verona, the city called Verona, the city of
you're in
Romeo
Verona.
and Juliet.
Ooh, did you suddenly find yourself there like the day before you didn't know you were going there and then, oh, here I am. I'm in Verona. No, I bet it took some planning, some preparing. You probably did some research. What is this place like? Of all the in this locality, where's the best place to stay? Are there schools there? Are there, is there a market? How easy would it be to access all the things that I need? You would do a lot of research before you settle on the place that you want to go to. Most people would do that. Okay. Same thing if you were selecting a school, if you're selecting a career, if you're selecting even a dress. Some people would go to different websites and check out the different designs and finally decide on this one. But when it comes to marriage, people are flippant. It's like, my father knows their mother and we are from the same place and I'm old enough and he likes me, I like him. And, he bought me chocolate, she bought me this, let's get married. And there's so little that is done for many people about marriage, about even understanding yourself as an individual before you now go and join forces with somebody. Okay, and then start to build together. There's an example that my husband likes to give too that I agree with, and particularly talking to women. Okay, he says that marriage is like stopping a taxi. Okay, now people in the international community may not really understand what I'm saying. Here in Nigeria, sometimes you could just stand on this roadside and flag down a taxi. I know in many places you can do that. Apart from Uber and all that, you can flag down a cab, right? So marriage is like a woman flagging down a cab or standing by the roadside and a cab stops. Now imagine with me that this woman has a phone in her hand and she's holding it to her ear and she's chatting with her friend. Yeah, how are you doing? And all this and all that. And she flags down the car. She gets into the car. Yes, are you serious? Oh my gosh, she's still gisting. And then the car starts to move. Somewhere along the line, she starts to look around. It's like, where am I? Where are you going? And then the driver says, I'm going to, okay, let's use a place in New York. Let's say, or in the US. I'm going to New York. Like, New York? No. I wasn't trying to go to New York. I was trying to go to what can be another, a completely different direction. Like, what? And maybe she's halfway to New York at this point when she realizes this is not where I want to go. Now, the trouble is this. He is not going to take you all the way back to where he picked you from. He's going to drop you off in this place, which is not New York. It's not where you were trying to go. You're lost in this new place where you have to now start trying to figure out and recalibrate your life and trying to understand, do I want to go back where I was coming from? Do I want to find a way from this place to the place I was trying to go, which is the other direction? What do I want to do? This is the kind of situation that many people find themselves in when it comes to marriage. And so why I'm more interested in working with the people who are planning for marriage is because hopefully they've not yet gotten in the tax. So they can still choose. Sorry, excuse me, where are you going? Because I'm trying to go to, so in Abuja, I will say I'm trying to go to maybe Maitama. And the guy says, no, sorry, I'm going to nope, we're not going in the same direction. Thank you. Wait on for the next vehicle, which puts her in a much better state and puts him in a much better state too, because the guy who was trying to go to Nyanya was hoping to have a companion that would take him all the way there and hoping that they will have a good time there. And he's disappointed and she's disappointed. She's lost. He's without a companion. Both of them are because they did not have the discussions they should have had at the beginning. This is where marriage coaching comes in. Teaching people what marriage really is, helping them to understand who they are, whether this person that they're partnering with is the right person for them.
Okay, so before we were talking about marriage and what you do for the people that make them come to you, we were talking of also some of the challenges that they have. I don't know if you want to expand on that more. For what exactly are they dealing with that they are coming to meet you for help?
Thank you for that question. There are a lot of couples that are good people individually, but when they come together, it's all kinds of chaos. And many times the reasons are simple. Men and women are very different. They're very different. The way they process things, the way they look at things, everything, it's very different. And many times a woman is marrying thinking she's marrying another woman. A man is marrying thinking he's marrying another man. And so they think the same rules of communication, the same rules of engagement apply in this case. And then they're disappointed when it doesn't work. So just helping them, most marriage problems are associated with communication, and some of them may be other things, managing conflict, issues around managing finances. But most times it's around communication in some way, shape, or form. There's also issues of physical intimacy, understanding the demands and requirements or needs of each person, meeting each other's needs and understanding the reason why it's on you to do that. One of the things we try to help them to see is that in marriage, if you're selfish, you will be unhappy, you will make your spouse unhappy. Nobody wins when you're selfish. So helping them to get the right mindset. So we look at the two sets of people really that we help. One is the people who are preparing for marriage, because if they know better, they will make better choices. So helping them to understand what marriage is and what's the best ways to have the kind of marriage that they have. And I say that they seek to have, because not everybody has the same goals for marriage. Some people want a marriage. I'll give you an example. There was a young man who he felt that, look, he has all these years, he's been oppressed by his older sibling, by everybody else in his household was older than him. Everybody else was telling him what to do. And what he wanted out of marriage was someone that he could tell what to do. Now, it's important to understand this goal that he has, so that if a woman is considering getting married to him, is she willing to be the person who is always told what to do? Because there are women like that who really just want to be told what to do. They don't want to have to make decisions. They don't want to have to make choices. And just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So it's good to know that this is his expectation, so that if a woman is contemplating him as a spouse, she's ready for what he does. If not, they're going to have big troubles. If she's a woman who is desiring to build a life of her own, who's desiring to have her own dreams, has her own aspirations, they're going to have big trouble. So those kinds of things, helping them to see that, okay, we're on the same page. Yes, we can go together. Like the Bible says, can two walk together except they agree? So that's one. The second set are people who are already married. They're in a marriage. Maybe some are having difficulty, some are not. They just want to improve their marriage. Okay, so depending on what the issues are, because some people have challenges. Maybe they're just bored. Marriage is just stale. It's just become routine. Nothing interesting anymore. Helping them to spice up their marriage, be what they need in that case. For some, it's there's so much conflict they just cannot see eye to eye. So helping them to see things through the other person's eyes is the way that we do it. And there are ways that we do all of that. So different strokes, different needs. So usually the first thing would be, usually we have a 30 minutes interactive session just to hear them out, sound them out, understand what they are, what they expect, where they are, what their expectations are.
All right. Thank you so much for that. This is the last question I'm going to ask you here as we are moving towards the end of it, because of course we already spent all the time and we can see that you are even enjoying it more because you are driving and you are still talking. And that is cool. That is kind of cool for us. So who should reach out to you for counseling, for marriage, for assistance or advice on how to get started or how to have a better marriage?
So like I said, people who are thinking of marriage, who want to get married, usually, if you haven't had any form of marriage counseling, premarital counseling, I advise that you reach out and let's just have a conversation, because there's a lot that's involved in marriage that many people don't realize until you're in. Discourage them from getting married. We're just trying to make sure that they have the right mindset and they have the right information before they get married. So that's one set, the people planning to get married. Another set is the people who are married and want to improve their marriage. Before you think of divorce, think of counseling. Or don't wait until things are so bad that you're thinking of divorce. Okay, so if you just want to improve the quality of your relationship, then you should seek marriage counseling. So that's the second set. The last set are people who may have read our book. Okay, Raging Waters. Raging Waters is a novel that is about infidelity in marriage, parenting, role modeling, a number of different things, but it's a marriage novel. It's an easy read, it's lovely, and it highlights a lot of important points. So there are many things that come up that people think about when they read the book and like, it's true, I haven't even considered this. Can we talk? Okay, so if you've read the book, you want to have a discussion around marriage, you want to have a discussion around how certain aspects of it affect your marriage.
All right, super. So where can people find this book? And how can people connect with you? Those who want to learn more about you or those who want to get a copy of this book, share with them.
So you can contact me. I have a website, toluekwe.com. You can also, for the book, you can go to Amazon. It's available on Amazon, amazon.co.uk, amazon.com. It's available in the different Amazon stores. It's also available on Seller. So whether you want the read-only copy or you want a hard copy, you can also order on Seller. And I guess I'll send the links for all of these so that you can connect. For somebody who wants to book a session with me, I can also send the link for the lengthy so that they can just book a 30-minute slot and have a free conversation first before we determine what it is that's.
You talked about your mom. That is really very interesting. But could you also talk about your dad? What do you remember of your dad?
My dad was amazing. There were some things that I later understood were very uncommon for an African man. My dad, chivalry was one of the things. So I'll give you an example. It never occurred to me until I got to university that you could rush to the door and a man would be also trying to get into the door and would brush past you and go in. Like my dad always held doors open for us. He would, if I was to go out with him, he would open the passenger's door first for me to sit. He would shut the door, then he would go and sit in driver's seat, My dad was this guy who would clear his plate. He would eat and he would clear his plates and he would wash his plates and whatever plates he found in the sink. Like, he was not a typical African man. That's what I eventually got to understand. My dad was amazing. He was my hero. He was the person I could run to with any kind of problem and he would find a way to solve it. I remember one day that I rushed home and it was rainy, but some man had kind of tried to harass me. And this was like 7 p.m. So I run home and I'm crying because I was just shocked. I was able to escape, but I was so shaken up by this. It was in the dark. I couldn't see the person, but he had just come close to me and tried to, and I was able to run away. I ran home and I told my dad, my dad bolted out. I don't know what he thought he was going to go and catch or where he would look or who he would look for. But my dad ran out, rushed out on his bike and was going to go and deal with whoever it was. And that was my dad, always ready to jump to my rescue. So I really, really looked up to him as well.
That's lovely. You wanted to say something also about your husband.
I'm saying that I married a man who combines the good features of my mom and my dad, and just an amazing human being. And he's my friend.
All right, lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you, Tolu. Now, how do you conclude this conversation? What is your final thought here to leave the people with briefly?
We all need one another. It's very interesting how life is. Something you need is with someone else, and something someone else needs is with you. Don't suffer in silence. The worst thing you can do to yourself in this day and age is suffer with a problem and think that there's no solution. There is a solution. You just need to reach out and find it.
Thank you so much for that. And that is really a good advice. I don't need to add anything to that. Okay. There is always a solution. Thank you so much, Tolu. It has been really valuable here. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm honored. I really appreciate the time.